Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sake Revolution. If you are looking for America's first sake podcast, you are in luck. You found it. We're right here. I am your host, John Puma. You might know me as the guy over at the Internet Sake Discord. And around these parts, I am the non-sake samurai. I leave the sake samurai duties to my amazing co-host.
I am your co-host, Timothy Sullivan. I am a sake samurai, sake educator, as well as the founder of the Urban Sake website. And every week, John and I will be here tasting and also chatting about all things sake, doing our best to make it fun and easy to understand.
All right. I understand we're all we're a little kawaii'd out after last week. Not that I think you can ever truly be tired of cute things, but...
Yeah, well, I remember back to when the pandemic first started and we were doing these episodes on Zoom as we are now still. And one thing we said a lot, almost every week, if I remember correctly, was that I can't wait to visit Japan again. And we're still here waiting to visit Japan again.
Always waiting.
Yes.
I feel like.
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be a while. Just kind of seeing how things are going. Even though, vaccines are getting out there and people are able to live more normal lives now, I do think that it's going to be a bit of time before borders, particularly to that country, are going to be open.
Yep, we want everyone to be safe, and we want to travel to Japan again when it's safe to do so, and it'll be good for everyone. But until that time, looks like we're going to have to take another virtual trip to Japan.
Those are fun. I still like those. Those are a lot of fun.
And I think besides Tokyo, the most famous city in the whole country has to be what? Don't say Sapporo.
No. No, I think that when most people go to Japan, they do for their very first trip, they do like the Tokyo Kyoto thing. You go to Tokyo, you spend like a lot of your time there, and then you take the Shinkansen down to Kyoto, do all of the cultural things, and then you go back to Tokyo.
Yes.
That seems to be a common thing that I hear a lot from people. It's also what I did the very first time I ever went to Japan.
Yes. I spent my first night in Japan in Kyoto. So I went right from the Tokyo airport to Kyoto, and it was an amazing introduction. So there's a few things we know about Kyoto, just common knowledge. It's a major, major tourist destination. And the reason for that is because it has so much preserved culture. So there are shrines and temples and beautifully preserved parts of the old city. And it is just enchanting to visit Kyoto. That's why it's become such a tourist hub. But for our purposes, it also has a very rich sake history as well.
When I think of Kyoto, even now, the thing I think of is that rich history, is that the fact that they are the original capital, and the shrines and all that other fun stuff. And I forget that there is a lot of sake over there.
Yeah. That's right. Kyoto was the capital of Japan from 794 to 1869. So that's a long time. And when it comes to sake breweries, right now there's about 43 or 44 sake breweries in Kyoto.
Wow.
And 21, about half of those are in this area of Kyoto City called Fushimi. And Fushimi, that is the sake neighborhood of Kyoto. And we've talked about these sake neighborhoods before. There's a really famous one in Hiroshima, isn't there?
Right, yeah, Saijo.
That's right. So Saijo is very similar to what you're going to find in Fushimi. The sake brewery industry kind of grew up in this neighborhood, and it's south of the area you would go to as a tourist in Kyoto. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons that this Fushimi area became well known for sake and many breweries moved there is because of the water that is available there. The city of Kyoto is kind of in a valley, so there's mountains on all sides of it. So there's wonderful water runoff, and they have great access to water in this Fushimi neighborhood. So that's one of the reasons that sake kind of grew up in this area.
Nice. And I've always been told when you're opening up your sake brewery, you go where the water is. You don't go where the rice is necessarily. It's easier to bring the rice to the brewery than it is to bring the water to the brewery. Unless you're sinking and then you want the rice within 5 minutes of transport, of some mysterious transport of your brewery. Water is heavy. Water is big. Water is difficult to move. And I guess that explains why there's so many breweries in this one valley. They're all sharing that water source.
Yeah. So what was your impression of Kyoto when you went there? What did you do? Anything fun, interesting?
I don't know. So this was a very long time ago. This is the very first time I was ever in Japan. I feel like we covered some of this before, where I did not have the most ideal trip to Japan. And this Kyoto portion of it, this overnight event, was just another example of that, I guess. We went to a lot of shrines, and after like the third shrine, I kind of realized that all the shrines kind of look the same, and we're still going, and there's an itinerary, and we're just going to all these places, and just walking a lot, and it was kind of hot, and I'm tired, and I think I might have mentioned in the past on this trip I didn't really eat a lot, so I was in a really bad mood. So the very first time I went to Kyoto did not get a fair shake from me.
Okay. Did Kyoto get a redemption trip from you?
Kyoto got a sake redemption trip.
All right.
Where I was in Kyoto only for one night, but we went to quite a few really nice sake izakayas and sake bars in the area, and found that there's a really great culture for that in the vicinity. Didn't visit any breweries, but I really did enjoy getting to sip sake and talk to people. I always like to find out what the local scene is like when I go someplace, and this was a lot of fun. And Kyoto's is very, very healthy, and we had a great time.
Did you have a particular sake bar you went to that you liked and you want to shout out?
Yeah, I do actually. I want to shout out, and I feel like a lot of people probably have heard of this place because it is popular with foreigners. But it's called Jam Hostel. And
of course.
Yeah, it is.
I was going to shout out Sake Bar Jam.
Oh, all right. So it's a sake bar. It's very foreigner friendly. It's a great place to introduce people to sake. And upstairs, it's a hostel. And it's really interesting. The people there are very fluent in English. They have a wonderful selection of sake and a great knowledge of it. We brought a friend of ours there who is not familiar with sake, and he had a blast.
Yeah, so it's owned by a couple, Mr. and Mrs. Ikeda. I've met them many times. They're wonderful people, very friendly, and they have a wonderful selection of fresh Kyoto local sake. English is spoken there, and it's right on the edge of the Gion district, which is known as the geisha district or the nightlife district. And it is a wonderful place to visit. So I wanted to shout out the Ikedas and Sake Bar Jam. When we get back to Kyoto, I can't wait to visit them again.
Very nice. I also went to a non-sake bar. I know this sounds blasphemous and weird, but I have to shout this place out because it was amazing. It was called Sour. And when you go into Sour, it's a standing bar. And behind the counter is what looks like a supermarket fruit rack. Like it's lit in the same way as supermarket fruit rack. It just looks like a supermarket fruit rack. And the menu is whatever fruit is on the rack and a blender and shochu and seltzer. And they just make whatever fruit sours out of whatever they've got. And it's a lot of fun, and they tend to be pretty tasty.
Wow, that place could be like a smoothie bar during the day. And
absolutely. I actually think something like that would actually fly here. I think that would be a fun thing to do. They can probably go with a whole you're getting this like nutritious fruit with your cocktail.
Love it.
But yeah, that place was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I've had many trips to Kyoto, and I always have a wonderful, wonderful time. Kyoto is known for many things. We mentioned the sake culture there. It's also really famous for green tea, and it's famous for refinement culture. You see a lot of people wearing kimono when you're walking around, and very refined, high-end kaiseki restaurants as well. You mentioned visiting all the different shrines, and I have a hot tip for any sake lovers going to Kyoto. There is a shrine off the beaten path that is very important for the sake industry. It's called Matsuo Taisha. Matsuo Taisha. And it was built in 701 AD, and it is a shrine, Shinto shrine to the god of sake. Now, when people think of shrines in Kyoto, the most famous one is Fushimi Inari Taisha, which is the one with all those red, the vermilion gates that go one after the other. If you've ever seen Memoirs of a Geisha, the little girls running through the gates, that's what we're talking about. And that is in the Fushimi neighborhood, so that is south of the city, and that's what a lot of people think of when they think of the Shinto shrines in Kyoto. But the Matsuo Taisha shrine is really off the beaten path. I had to take a taxi to get there, and it's relatively small compared to other complexes you can find in the city. But it is the spiritual home of the god of sake, and along one side of the main square is a display rack of barrels of sake that have been donated by brewers from all across the country as an offering to the god of sake. So if you're ever in Kyoto and want a sake adventure off the beaten path, you can go pay your respects to Matsuo Taisha, and it is a wonderful place to visit. And it's usually not crowded with tourists at all. So it's a great place to visit. And I think for 100 yen, about $1, they have a private garden in the back that you pay an entrance fee, and you can walk around this beautifully manicured garden in the back. So that's my hot tip for doing something sake related in Kyoto.
Nice. Can you drink any sake with the god of sake?
BYO.
BYO, yeah, okay. That's once sake gets more popular, that shrine's going to pick up. Business is going to pick up. People are going to be waiting to go over there, hang out with the god of sake.
Yeah, it's not just this like very special Shinto shrine for the god of sake. There's some other things that have happened in Kyoto that are really important for the sake industry, and there's many famous sake breweries. Now I've heard,
a little bird told me that this is also where they do the sake samurai ceremony. Yes. I don't know where I might have heard that.
Yes. Yes. So when they do it in person every October, they have the sake samurai induction ceremony in Kyoto as well. You get to experience all this sake history when you visit Kyoto.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I like sake. I like history. So it sounds like there's a whole experience that I've never had in Kyoto, and I need to go back.
Definitely. And I was surprised. I was reading a little bit of more modern history, like the 20th century history of sake, and some pretty famous things happened in Kyoto as the sake industry was evolving over the 20th century. Now, you may have heard of this brand before, Gekkeikan.
Yes.
It's pretty famous. It is a very, very large brewery, founded in 1637. And I read that they were one of the first breweries to institute year-round sake production in the early 20th century. So when refrigeration was introduced, they didn't have to brew with the seasons anymore. So Gekkeikan was one of the first breweries to institute year-round brewing, which was very radical at the time.
Yeah.
They also have a really interesting museum at Gekkeikan. It is called Okura Sake Museum. And if you're looking for an approachable, easy to understand, and very accessible sake history museum, it is absolutely a must-do. So that's something that's very easy to find and easy to navigate, and a great introduction to sake history.
So Tim, what else? That's the museum sounds really nice. I've never actually been to a sake museum before, so kind of that goes on the bucket list, I think. What else does Kyoto have to offer the sake lover in all of us?
Well, there's another really interesting sake history tidbit that happened in the post-war period. In 1964, there was a brewery, Masuda Tokubi Shoten, which they make a very famous brand called Tsuki no Katsura. And I talked about them in our Koshu, or our aged sake episode. I mentioned that this brewery had this vault of decades-old sake aging.
The oldest kosher.
The oldest, we think. And they're also not only famous for their koshu, but they lobbied in the mid-'60s. They lobbied to make nigori legal again. So nigori was...
Time out. Wait. Again? Wait a minute. Somebody outlawed nigori at some point?
Yes. Well, originally all sake was cloudy. There was no filtering. Then when kind of pressing and filtering came along, the government started to tax the sake when it got pressed or filtered. So they didn't want anyone skipping the pressing filtering step. So sake was required by law to go through this pressing filtering step. But some breweries like Tsuki no Katsura wanted to make a cloudy style sake, coarsely filtered. You know, not doburoku, not completely unfiltered, but they wanted a little bit of sake rice left over in their sake, and they lobbied for nigori sake to be an allowable style to make once again. So that happened in 1964. So they're kind of seen as the modern instigators of commercially available nigori sake. So that happened in the mid-'60s. And as fate would have it, I actually brought a sake today to taste from Tsuki no Katsura brand as my representative of Kyoto sake. I know we each brought a different sake from Kyoto today.
We did. Now this is not a nigori, though.
No, it's not.
Not the nigori they brought back.
After all that buildup. Yeah, no, it's they have lovely nigori. They also have sparkling nigori, but I brought a Junmai Ginjo, Tsuki no Katsura Yanagi. Yanagi means willow, like the tree, willow. This brewery, again, is Masuda Tokubi Shoten, founded in 1675. I don't know if it's just me, John, but the breweries seem to be getting older and older and older here.
I'm noticing that Kyoto has a propensity towards older breweries.
Yes. So the current president is Mr. Masuda, and he's the 14th generation of the family to make sake at this location. So it's a very historic, very beautiful brewery. The Yanagi, or the Willow Junmai Ginjo, is a 15.5% alcohol. It's made using two rices, Yamada Nishiki and Yume Nishiki. Those are polished down to 50% remaining. We have an SMV, that's a sake meter value, how sweet or dry. That's a +2, which is pretty neutral there. And then we have a very balanced acidity of 1.5. All right, so I'm super curious, drum roll please, what Kyoto sake did you bring to taste today?
Well, I am glad you asked. So mine is from a brewery called Yamamoto Hanke, which, stop me if you've heard this century before, was established in 1677.
Do you think all the founders of all these breweries like hung out together?
It wouldn't shock me if they were like oh, you know, like Genpi's making a brewery. Let's try this stuff. Oh, I can do better than that. And then they go and try to make a brewery, and then they just kind of, it snowballs. I could definitely see that being something that happened. But no, this the name of the brand is Shinsei, and this is their Junmai Daiginjo. I do not have the rice type, but the alcohol percentage is 15%. The rice was milled to 50% of its original size. And the sake meter value, that measure of dry to sweet, is -1. So it should be a touch sweet. We'll see how it goes. And the acidity is 1.3. So not terribly high, but not very low either.
Yeah. You know, what strikes me reading through both of our stats on these sakes is there's a lot of overlap. The milling rate, alcohol percentage, the acidity and SMV are not that far apart. We don't know what your rice is, but, you know, there's a good chance it might be Yamada Nishiki as a
I
Junmai
have a
Daiginjo.
striking suspicion that it's
Yeah.
Yamada Nishiki.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if there's overlap in our flavor profiles as well.
Great. So why don't you grab your bottle,
All right.
open it up, and let's
All right. So let me
get that one in a glass.
Yep, let me open this up. And we're going to pour. All right. Looks nice and clear. Okay.
Ooh.
The aroma is very luscious and fruity. It smells melony and a little bit banana-y. So very fruity, very much a fruit salad aroma.
Ooh.
It smells very pretty and almost floral as well.
That sounds right up my alley.
Yes. But it's not from Yamagata. This is a Kyoto special.
Nice.
All right. Well, let's give it a taste. It tastes good.
Slap that one on the bottle right there. It tastes good. Timothy Sullivan, Sake Samurai.
No. My most sophisticated review ever. The flavor is very fruity, and I'm getting on the palate, the taste is a little bit more towards cherry and some kind of deeper fruit flavors. Mm-hmm. The aroma was a little bit fresher and more tropical. The flavor on the palate is like a little bit of cherry and a little bit richer. Very silky smooth, and it's not light and quiet. It's a little bit richer and has a bit of weight to it. Still very silky, but rich coating on the palate, a medium finish, and really enjoyable. Just a very fresh, delicious, easy drinking, and I would love to have this at a celebration or something like that.
That sounds quite good. Sounds right up my alley. Kind of jealous that we're not drinking the same thing today.
Yeah.
That does sound wonderful.
And the aroma is not shy either. Sometimes you really have to stick your nose into the glass, give it a really good swirl to get the aroma up and out there. But this is overflowing the glass. The aromatics are strong, engaging, and really lovely. So very easy to enjoy, smooth, and very delicious.
Nice.
All right. I'm excited to see what you have to say about your Shinsei.
I'm also very excited to see what I have to say about Shinsei because I've never tasted this before.
Ooh.
A special treat.
We're going to get your hot take.
My hot take. Hopefully I will think it is good. All right. The aroma's got a nice combination of fruit and rice. It's a little bit, so it's definitely got like a ricey component to the nose. Like you like to talk about that steamed bowl of rice aroma. So it's
Yes,
that
I do talk about that a lot.
along with fruit. So it's very nice. And then the taste is unique. This is different in a good way. This is different in a good way. There is some nice, like a nice fruity foundation to it. The rice is still present, and it gives way to a bit of a richness, a bit of a depth to it. It's interesting because I'm getting a lot of the things that are coming to my mind are not that dissimilar to what you described with your sake. Like so many, I would say like maybe a little more rice forward on my end here, but a lot of the other components here, that depth and richness with the fruit is present in this as well. There's also like a light acidity throughout that just kind of plays in the background. Very tasty, very, very nice. And if you want to have a little bit more of a rice presence in your fruity sake, like this is probably something you should get your hands on, because it's doing that in a way that I've not tasted too many sakes that do this.
Yeah, it's nice when sakes can integrate that rice flavor or maybe that umami flavor with something reminiscent of fruits and kind of create a balance there. That's a high wire balancing act for sure.
Yeah, I think that this could easily have gone. I think a little bit too much rice would have maybe gone a different direction for this. But no, they did it. They nailed it.
Yeah. And I think that rice flavor you're talking about is not what people expect when they purchase a Junmai Daikinjo.
No,
They're usually much more of the profile that I described for my sake. Very fruity, usually sometimes rich, and something you'd want to drink in a wine glass.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. It's just taking that in a slightly different direction, that classic Daiginjo idea.
Well, I do have to remind you that my brewery, opened in 1675, does have 2 years more brewing experience than your brewery, opened in 1677. So that might explain a little.
It's entirely possible that the founder of this brewery went to yours and was like, this needs more rice. It's like, I like what you guys are doing, but I feel like I want to taste the rice a little bit more. You know what? I'm going to go do it myself. 2 years later, boom. Yamamoto Honke. I don't, guys, I don't really think that's how the brewery started, but but our fantasy Kyoto brewery origin stories are kind of interesting, though.
Yeah, so as mine is warming up, it's getting even more fragrant. The aroma's becoming even more perfumed and more rich. So it's really something you can sink your teeth into and just enjoy. It has a very luxurious kind of vibe to it, my sake.
I suspect that as mine warms up, the rice will be more prominent.
Yep.
I also think that that richness is going to rise up. I think that the fruit and the sweetness will kind of be a little subverted. So I will have this chilled. Because I think I like it exactly where it is. It's in that perfect little Goldilocks spot for me.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And again, I say for me, because, some people might taste this and be like, you know what? I want to explore those other flavors. And maybe they'll bring it up to room temperature and really enjoy that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we've discovered 2 great sakes from Kyoto. We learned a little bit about the Kyoto history. And I do want to remind people that Kyoto is not just Kyoto City. It is a whole prefecture. And about half the breweries are outside of this Fushimi area. Mm-hmm. So if you do get to Kyoto and you have some time, it's really worthwhile to go a little bit further afield and explore some of the breweries and towns that are outside of Kyoto City Central.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to do that necessarily the next time in Kyoto. I think I have some makeup time I need to do in the city itself, in the city proper. But once I get through all of that, I will get a little bit further afield and visit some of these other breweries.
Yes, and I will meet you at Sake Bar Jam for a drink.
Excellent.
Well, now I can't wait to get back to Kyoto. This was a fun...
These episodes are killing us, Tim. Every time we do one of these, like...
I know. Heavy sigh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was definitely my heavy sigh.
Yeah.
But it is really nice to have these conversations, to learn more about these places that, honestly, I probably didn't appreciate enough when I was previously visiting. So this will help me. And hopefully help our listeners to get the most out of Kyoto next time they are there.
Yeah, and it is never too early to start planning your next trip to Kyoto. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, this was a lot of fun. I am so homesick for Kyoto, but we are going to stay positive and look forward to our next trip. John, it was great to taste with you. Thanks for taking the time. And I really hope that our listeners are enjoying our show as well. If you'd like to show your support for Sake Revolution, one great way you can help us out right now is to back us on Patreon. We are a listener-supported show, and we appreciate each and every one of you who take the time to back us on Patreon and help us bring Sake Revolution to you free of advertisements.
Right. The site for that is just going to be patreon.com/Sake Revolution. And you can go there and join one of our tiers. We have a few, and we really do appreciate your support. And for people who don't do that, we also appreciate your support by listening. We appreciate that you take the time to listen to our show. We really appreciate when you guys do reviews on your podcast platforms. They really do help get the word out about the show, and we do really appreciate that. And one other thing, though, make sure you tell your friends, too, because while getting the reviews out there and supporting us on Patreon, these are all really nice things that help us out a lot. Directly telling a friend, huge, huge boost every time.
And family.
And family. Pets, whomever.
And as always, if you would like to learn more about any of the topics, sakes, or prefectures we talked about in today's episode, be sure to visit our website, sakerevolution.com, for all the detailed show notes.
And for all of your sake question needs, we have an email address, feedback@sakerevolution.com. You want to send the emails there, and we will read them. And then we will react to them in one way or another. So yes, until next time, please raise a glass. Please remember to keep drinking sake and kanpai.